Yes, good evening and welcome back to the Football Tribe UG channel. Robert Kesakos is your usual suspect. Welcome back to yet another live broadcast on your favorite football updates channel. It's a pleasure to be back. There's plenty for us to discuss, uh, including the CHAN, tournament here in East Africa. So we'll be discussing that. We'll be discussing transfers and more from the world of sport, from the world of football. So, yeah, do join me this evening as we get into the conversation for today, because there's plenty for us to discuss that I wouldn't want any of you to be missing out on. But allow me to have our audience tested before we get into the thick and depth of any conversation today. Otherwise, how has been your weekend? It's been a beautiful day. It's been an okay day. A bit tiring on my end, but nothing that we can't get through. Nothing that we can't get through. And then of course, we'll be discussing Alexander Isak. We'll be discussing, reported links of Alejandro Garnacho to Besiktas, and more of that. So please indulge me as we get into today's discussion, as I wait for the rest of you to join. Okay. Jesus Christ. This capture thing is not as easy as they should be. I wish to say thank you to all our new community members, those that have recently joined. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to have you around. It's great having you join the community, and I hope we will go on to have a very good time with you guys. Your invaluable input is much appreciated, really, for the purposes of the growth of this podcast. So thank you so much. Thank you so much, really. Anyways, where do we even get to start today's conversation from? I will kick it off with the CHAN Championships. That's the Africa Nations Championships that did kick off today in Tanzania, with Tanzania beating up against Burkina Faso by 2-0. One was a very questionable penalty with Suleimani stepping up to convert from the penalty spot to give the hosts a deserved lead that was at the stroke of halftime in the 48th minutes. Added minutes of the first half. That's when that goal came, and then of course Hussein did score the second in the 71st minute that sealed the victory for Tanzania, one of the host nations for this tournament. Remember, it's the three countries in East Africa that are hosting the tournament. That's Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania. They are the hosts. And tomorrow, still on match day 1, we will have games that will involve, we will have Kenya face up with Democratic Republic of Congo. So many promises have been made in regards to. So many promises have been made to the Kenyan national team in regards to that, for every win that they could register in the competition. So it's going to be quite entertaining to see how those teams do fare. But like I said, Abdul Hamisi Suleimani stepped up from the penalty spot to give Tanzania the lead. It was a bit of a questionable penalty because we thought the defender had gotten the ball. It's not a match that I did get to watch entirely, just managed to catch bits and here, but as I try to work on my subscription to see if I can, bring you the latest from those games. And then Muhammad Hussein scored the other goal of the day. Tanzanians have been promised $400,000 if they do win the competition, and I think they've been promised other monies. Then I've seen Kenyans have been promised $10,000 for every win that they do register in this tournament. So let's wait and see how they will, compete, how it will work out for them in as far as it's concerned. But like I said, tomorrow at 3 p.m. East African time, Kenya will be up against DRC Congo, while Morocco will be up against Algeria tomorrow. That game, I think, between Kenya and the DRC Congo is expected to be, I think, at Kasarani Stadium, at the Kasarani Stadium. I'm trying to see if much there's. Oh, the Moi International Sports Center. That's going to be the venue for the game. That's going to be that's going to be the venue for that game for Kenya. I'm trying to the Safaricom Stadium, Kasarani. Yes, it's going to be at the Kasarani Stadium. Although some sources call it the Moi International Sports Center. And then President Moi in Kenya is remembered as one of those that really did love sports. Hi, Peter Parker. Good to have you on the broadcast. How have you been, my colleague? It's been a while since I last seen you on one of our broadcasts, but I hope whatever was keeping you busy was all good, that you didn't have any misfortunes that kept you away. So it's always a pleasure to see you around with it. So thank you so much for sparing the moment to be with us this evening. So those are the African Nations Championships. Like I've told you, DRC against Kenya tomorrow at 3 p.m. while later at 6 p.m. Angola will be up against Morocco. I think the expectation is that it will be at the same venue. No, that other game will be at the Nyayo Stadium. What happened to Bayern match? Bayern match. Let's get to that in a bit. But I saw Bayern Munich, I think, won that game. I think by 2-1. I seem to remember Michael Olise, I think, being one of the goal scorers in that fixture. But let's get to it in a bit, because there's so much happening in as far as club friendlies go. But also remember that some teams are already back. Some of the big teams are back in action. Some simpler leagues, leagues like League One in the UK. But yeah, I see Bayern Munich, beating up against Lyon by 2-1. That game, Michael Olise scored the brace in that game. So yeah, that's how it ended at 2-1 in favor of Bayern Munich. Gomez Rodriguez did score the only consolation for Olympic Lyon. But anyways, away from the the African Nations Championships. Let's go straight to Alexander Isak, because he has returned to the UK to train again with Newcastle, and he did land back in the UK. And I've seen reports that he was attacked as he left the Newcastle training facility by some angry fans and Newcastle fans there. But he does return from Spain, where he was training with his former club, Real Sociedad. He was using their facilities there in the Basque Country, is it Basque Country or county? I think country. But he has returned with the expectation. Yes, the facility is called the Zubizieta facilities. Are there over in Spain, where he's been training ever since he did request Newcastle to leave him out of their squad for the Asian tour. And Newcastle are set to wrap up that Asian tour tomorrow with the fixture against Tottenham Hotspurs in South Korea. Unfortunately for Newcastle, they've lost all their 4 games so far. Actually, 3 games that they so far played in this pre-season. They did lose to Celtic by 4-0. Oh, but they had an earlier game. What was the game? It was with the non-league side. I don't think it was an official club friendly, but maybe a warm-up fixture before they faced off with Celtic. I think they beat up against, was it Calise by 4-0, but they lost to Celtic by 4-0, then lost to Arsenal by 3-2, and then they lost to the K-League All-Stars there in South Korea by a goal to nil. And then tomorrow at 2:30 p.m. they're going to be up against Tottenham Hotspurs. Tottenham Hotspurs coming into that fixture after beating up against Arsenal by a goal to nil in their last pre-season friendly. But yeah, Alexander Isak has returned to the UK to resume training in Newcastle as he waits for them to return from that Asian tour. This comes just a day after Newcastle turned down an 110 million bid from Liverpool for the 25-year-old Sweden striker. Now it remains to be seen whether his return has sort of speaks to pointers that he could be on his way out, or he just wants to stay professional within the context of this transfer saga as it continues to rage on. In July the 15th, Liverpool did formally, inform Newcastle of their interest in signing Alexander Isak for a deal in the region of 120 million pounds, but and then subsequently they followed it up with a bid on the 1st of August, which was about worth 110 million pounds, which was blatantly or outrightly turned down by Newcastle. Newcastle remain in the market to try and find a replacement for Alexander Isak, but they've also made proposals to Alexander Isak to stay at the club with an option of having him leave next summer, which I believe, I believe that even if Newcastle were to get another striker like Benjamin Sesko or whoever it may be, I think I would stay with Alexander Isak at all costs. I mean, the ball is in their control. The ball is well within their control when it comes to the contract situation of the player. Keep him for that one extra season. I'm sure while he may not be happy about it, he will come to terms with it and eventually play him the entire season. Look to let him go the next summer at a value that you still want. And if that value is not met, then again, maybe it could lessen, it could go up, depending. But hi Bestie, hi Pedri, good to have you back on the broadcast. So that's the situation with Alexander Isak returning from Spain to continue training with Newcastle. But like I've told you, Newcastle still have one game to play in South Korea. That game is going to be played against Tottenham Hotspurs. Tottenham Hotspurs, whose captain Son Heung-min did announce that he will be leaving the club after 10 years there. He did join them in 2015 from Bayer Leverkusen. Yes, I think from Bayer Leverkusen. He joined them in 2015 and he's gone on to have a very, very stellar career that climaxed with, the triumph of the UEFA Europa League when they beat up against Manchester United in the finals. He didn't have the best of seasons last season. Nonetheless, he still managed to post double figures. And as far as the Premier League was concerned, for goals and assists combined, it was, I think, a 16-goal involvement. 7 goals and 9 assists are provided for him in the previous campaign. So, at the age of 33 years old, he did turn 33 this month. I think Tottenham lose a very experienced player. They lose a player that will go down as one of the club legends in modern day times and things of that nature. So that's the situation at Tottenham Hotspurs. But Newcastle remain in the. I believe that by all counts and measures, they remain in the driving seat of this one. Did you notice the shirt numbers of new signings? Luis Diaz, 14 at Bayern Munich. Marcus Rashford, 14 at Barcelona. Victor Gyökeres, 14. Alexander Isak will get a 14 most likely if he goes to Liverpool. Wow, what a coincidence that would be. Mohamed Kudus at Tottenham, number 14 as well. No, at Tottenham Hotspurs, Mohamed Kudus is wearing the shirt number 20. Same for Anthony Elanga at Newcastle. Same for João Pedro at Chelsea. Same for Noni Madueke at Arsenal. They are all wearing the shirt numbers 20. Yeah, so that's the only point of correction that I would make. But yeah, too much of a coincidence. But it is what it is. I think usually for some players, a shirt number is a shirt number. For others, it's attached to some level of meaning. For example, I know for a fact that Martin Zubimendi was given multiple options, but he chose the shirt number 36, which apparently was the first shirt number he wore at Sociedad. Then, but it's common now, I guess. Thierry Henry, his legacy and fame. It could be that is true for Arsenal, but also, and maybe even at Barcelona in a way, but because Marcus Rashford did acknowledge just as much that Thierry Henry is one of those players that he admired the most growing up. But then when you go to Bayern Munich, of course, Henry did not play for Bayern Munich, so sometimes the reasons could be different. For some players, it's really, really something sentimental. For others, they want to, step within the footsteps of those legends. For example, Jude Bellingham at Real Madrid, he embodies that, Azizu, a kind of, feel and play. When you look at all players that have been given the shirt number 10 at Barcelona, I mean, they all love Lionel Messi. They would want to emulate him. Ansu Fati now moving it on to Lamine Yamal, whether they go on to live to those expectations of the shirt number that they are wearing. By the way, I'm one of those people that thought that after Lionel Messi wearing that shirt number 10, it could have been given some good time of a break. But the way it was handed out quickly, wow. Pause, no gay behavior. Luca, hi Luca, how are you doing? I hadn't grasped what you are trying to refer to. But anyways, so it is what it is with shirt numbers. A lot of people thought that maybe Thierry Henry's shirt number 14 should have been rested at Arsenal because of the things he was able to do in it. Yeah, but it's not very common, by the way, that you get a shirt number rested just because somebody did great things in it, unless unfortunately that person has passed on. For example, Liverpool will not be continuing the shirt number 20. They are, putting it on the sidelines in respect for Diogo Jota. The shirt number 23 at Manchester City was put at rest because of their former player, Cameroonian international, Mark Vivian Foe, who passed on. I do not know if they did something similar at Beijing Enterprises, where they lost Ismail Chak-Tiote during a training session at the age of 30. So Christian Atsu, he was playing in Turkey in 2023 February when he passed on. I do not know what kind of respect that was he at Besiktas or something. I don't know what kind of what kind of respect they did pay to him. I love you, brother. Where are you from? I'm from Kampala, Uganda. Thanks for asking. Leo Messi might come back to Barcelona for 5 months from January 2026 on loan deal from Miami. For 5 months, would it be 5 months? Because I would understand, because the MLS the season will be done. Because that's how Thierry Henry came back to Arsenal for a couple of months. When you remember when he came back in 2012 and scored against Leeds United in the FA Cup, but also he scored against Sunderland in a 2-1 victory against Sunderland during that season. So remember also, I'm not objecting to that, but I'm simply adding on to it because there was also reports that he would love to join a more competitive club or league ahead of the FIFA World Cup, and that's all. But that speculation, excuse me, was largely linked to the fact that his contract with Inter Miami runs up in December 2025. But I know for a fact that the two parties are already in negotiations to try and renew that contract. I think he's happy at Inter Miami. He's making good contributions. It's a team that he now has a stake in, the same way Cristiano Ronaldo now has a stake in Al Nassr. Then all the contract deals in terms of revenues that he gets from sponsors as being a very big brand as part of that league. I think it will be a very exciting move for him to return to a place that made him to play for them. I usually call it the last dance. For him to have the last dance in that Barcelona jersey, which I believe he still has the capacity to compete at the highest level. Maybe not at the same pace as he used to, but yeah, most definitely I would fancy him to get back in a Barcelona jersey. But let's wait and see how it will go down. Then you said, Do you love Mr. Tribe? What kind of love? When I see you, I'm so happy. I thank you. Pedri, what are you trying to insinuate? I do not insinuate anything here. Access code to Newcastle, here we go. It's not a here we go yet. Uh, Davis, hi Davis, good to have you on the broadcast. Why are you joining us from Davis? I kindly like the broadcast, but also consider subscribing to the channel. Bro, when La Liga is gonna start? La Liga does come soon, I think on the 15th of August. That's when the Spanish La Liga should get underway. When Girona face off with Rayo Vallecano, while Villarreal will be up against Real Oviedo. That's at 8 p.m. and 10:30 p.m. respectively. That's when the Spanish La Liga gets underway. So it does return on the same day with the Premier League. So Pedri also emphasizes that an added Barcelona fan. Then you say Sesko isn't here we go yet. That's true. It's not yet at that stage. But Manchester United are still in it. Newcastle have already placed a bid worth 80 million euros, 75 million euros as guaranteed fees, plus 5 million euros in expected add-ons. And I think this, heated sort of contention for Benjamin Sesko is going to end up, serving the interests of RB Leipzig in terms of getting a very significant transfer fee and better payment terms in terms of the structure. The player seems undecided so far in regards to where he really, really wants to play. While he does favor a move to Manchester United, he has not said no to Newcastle. So, and I seeing a joke on X by I think a Tottenham Hotspur fan saying that he said, and I think I should quote the exact tweet. Let me see if I can find it. Just give me a second to see if I can look it up. I thought it was a bit funny. Yes, he's called Nasser Kushabe. He said Benjamin Sesko has so far taken 2 weeks to decide whether to join Newcastle United or Manchester United. I understand his situation. It must be hard choosing between a club with no history and a club with no future. So basically, that's how he put it. While the tweet in its very nature is sort of disrespectful to Newcastle to say it's a team without history, and to disrespectful to Man United to say it's a team with no future, I sort of understand the banter behind it. But it's all banter. It's nothing serious. So Manchester United fans and Newcastle United fans, please do not take offense in those words. And I'm just rephrasing them because, again, usually you do not get a player take this long to ultimately decide, because while we got reports in the morning that Newcastle had moved ahead of Manchester United in the pursuit of Benjamin Sesko, they are yet to get a response from RB Leipzig when it comes to that bid that they placed, because RB Leipzig are waiting for Manchester United to make their own bid for the same player. So that's the kind of situation, because otherwise RB Leipzig would have simply said no to this initial bid. Maybe we want, more money out of this. We are waiting for second bid, and maybe Newcastle fast track that, and then they have a deal in place before even everything is done and dusted. On the player side, you remember the deal that saw Theo Hernandez leave AC Milan to go to Al Hilal. I mean, the two clubs agreed on a transfer fee, and it took ages for the club and the player to agree on personal terms, and eventually he came around to the table and he moved. So, and then you remember what happened in Nottingham Forest's pursuit for Samuel Mbangula and Timothy Weah. Nottingham Forest agreed to transfer fees with Juventus to sign both players, and then they went to personal terms. Timothy Weah rejected the move to Nottingham Forest, and that deal fell through. So I think Newcastle would have loved this to be sort of expedited a little further. Pedro, you say whoever gets Sesko will have 10 commas and 20 strokes. For every goal he scores, he misses like 1,000 chances. RB Leipzig fans know this already. Like I said before, Pedri, you say Sesko will definitely be United, but the question is it in Manchester or in Newcastle? Now, While I understand what you're trying to say, I will simply re-emphasize what I've said before. Benjamin Sesko is a brilliant young player. He's far from a finished product, but he's shown lots of signs of progress. He's shown a lot of potential. So that's what basically you're banking on. That's what you're betting on. And it's not different from when Manchester United went out, I think that was in 2022, and signed Rasmus Højlund from Atlanta. It's a bet on a young player who is very, very promising, So that's how I would summarize it up. So, yeah, he does miss chances, but even big players miss chances. We've seen that time and again. Maybe he needs to reduce the number of chances he does miss, but we've seen players like Nicholas Jackson miss loads of chances, and yet Nicholas Jackson is 24. We saw Joshua Zirkzee, 24, miss chances. So let's not really hold it against him. He's far from a finished product. Then you say Theo Hernandez is still 26. It's too much. It's too early for him to end his career, because playing in Saudi is basically early retirement. I'm going to disagree with you on that one, Pedri, because why? He's not the first player to go to the Saudi Pro League at that age or even younger. You remember when Ruben Neves left Wolverhampton Wanderers to join Al Hilal? Look at him. You saw him playing at the FIFA Club World Cup. You remember players like Malcolm. He did play for Barcelona at some point. I think he joined Barcelona. Was it after the World Cup in Russia? You've had so many players take that direction when they are below 30. You remember Sergej Milinkovic-Savic from Lazio. He went and he's playing for Al Hilal. So he isn't the first player to go at that sort of age ballpark, really. And it's not really retirement. First of all, by the way, there's very competitive football in the Saudi Pro League. Just because we do not watch it that much, and if anything, Al Hilal at the FIFA Club World Cup showed us a glimpse of what is happening over there. You have El Etfaq, El Etfiq, I think El Etfiq or El Etihad. I think El Etihad that won the Saudi Pro League there, and teams like Al Nassr. I think Al Nassr finished third on that table, and then Al Hilal finished second on that table in as far as their league is concerned. You had players like Karim Benzema, I think one of the top scorers over there. So basically, it's a very, very good league, really. It's a very good, yes, it's Al Ittihad where Karim Benzema plays. They wear, I think, a yellow and black striped jersey. So you have teams like Al Qadash, Al Ahly. They really, really did good, because if you have a league in which you have a total of 18 teams and you end with a league winner at 83 points, that's 1 point shy of Liverpool, who've played 4 games more in the Premier League. So it shows that bit of competitiveness. When you look at the second place team, was behind by a tally of 8 points. In the Premier League, the point gap between the second and the first was 10 points. So it's quite competitive, by the way. You had players like Cristiano Ronaldo. Actually, Cristiano Ronaldo was the top scorer with 25 goals. You had Ivan Toney at Al Ahly, scored 23 goals. Karim Benzema with 21 goals. So it's a competitive league, far from what a majority of us may know about the league. So I do not look at it as retirement. Ronaldo is the best. Okay. Thank you, Luca, for that. Pedri obviously would disagree with you. In his opinion, it's messy. Europe is still way more competitive than Saudi. He should have stayed in Europe. Atletico de Madrid wanted him. Again, yes, Europe is obviously still more competitive. That's true. Hi, George Olport. Good evening to you, my brother. How are you doing? How has been your Saturday? George Olport is from Eastern Uganda, and he's an Arsenal fan, so he's joining us this evening. So, excuse me. Pedri, what you say is true, that Europe is still more competitive. and that there was interest from European clubs. But again, the player was convinced that it's a good deal for him to go over there. But then also, some players have really been taken by the money factor. Drink Coca-Cola is yummy. I'm not too much of a soda guy. I try to stay away from it as much as possible, but thanks for recommending it. So you look at some players, for them money is a factor, and Ruben Neves, when he was leaving Wolverhampton Wanderers, he said pretty as much. He said for him it was really about the money and then the football, because he looked at the numbers that they were offering and he was going to be set for retirement. You know, he was going to have his family set forever, really. And then, you know, post his career, which he knows is not going to be too long, you know, look at Cristiano Ronaldo. Yes, while the football is there and the branding that, you know, everything that came with the deal, it was about money for him. So for some players, it boils down to the money. Because let's say you're at AC Milan and you're at earning, let's say, 55,000 euros per week. And then these guys are willing to offer you 200 euros or even $300,000 per week. You look at that and you, why are you not swayed? You know, so money is also a factor, because remember also the money in Saudi Arabia is tax free. So and the good thing is that you go, yes, and then when it comes to being summoned maybe for their respective national teams, just to remind you of how competitive the league is that most of those players are still being summoned to their respective national teams. I see you've highlighted Joao Felix. He's 25 years of age, you know. Mitrovic, these are players that are still summoned by their respective national teams. You saw Ruben Neves at the Portuguese national team. If the Saudi Pro League was not being rated as that high, managers at the national team levels would be summoning some of these players. You remember N'Golo Kante, he had already moved to Saudi Arabia when he got to play at the FIFA World Cup in Qatar in 2022, and he was one of the good players, or one of the better players for that French national team. So, I mean, it's the argument that the league is not competitive enough isn't true. How is it, man? Tester of Testers of Life? Good. Yeah, everything is okay. Good to have you back on the podcast. How is South Africa? Are you going to be rooting for your team when they play in Chan? Tell me, what are your expectations? I know some of your best players are from clubs like I think Orlando Pirates, Kaizer Chiefs, and Mamelodi Sundowns are not part of the squad because of their engagements in the CAF Champions League and I think CAF Confederations Cup, something like that. So do let me know, Tester, your expectations of the Bafana that will be playing at Chan. So Pedri, you say Kante, Benzema, Diaby. You mean Musa Diaby, the one who was at Aston Villa, formerly at Bayer Leverkusen. Brazovic, you say Ronaldo, Laporte, João Felix, Bento, Mahrez, Firmino, Tone, Ibanez, Mendy, Theo Hernandez, Cancelo, Mitrovic, Sergei Milinkovic-Savic, Galeno, Ruben Neves, Steve Bergwijn. Bergwijn left Ajax to Saudi Pro League. I wasn't informed about Steve Bergwijn. But anyways, the way you Benrahma, Yannick Carrasco, Frank Kessie, formerly at AC Milan, Trost Ekong. Trost Ekong was voted the best player of the tournament for the AFCON 2023 that was played in 2024. He was the captain for Nigeria's losing side in the finals. And then Simon Adingra, formerly at Brighton, now at Sunderland, was the young player of the tournament. So, Retegui, given the former Juventus defender. So the way you list them, so all those players have gone to the Saudi Pro League. There's very good football there. I do not know what their policies are when it comes to recruitment of their own players, nationality. But like I said, Saudi Arabia is investing a lot of money in football for more than footballing reasons. For starters, it's for long has had this international face of, sort of being, for lack of a better word, being rude people, with, the Islamic laws and things like that, that they not very accommodative of foreigners. The impression that it's a bit of a good country, so that it's a lawless country, so to speak, if for lack of a better word, and now they're trying to sort of paint their image globally as a different picture using football, and also because they are building towards hosting the FIFA World Cup 2034, and by the time we get to 2034, Saudi Arabia football, what many of you have known it for. You remember seeing them in Qatar when they beat up against Argentina in that game. I think was it by 2-1? So really, then Halam Madrid, that's Real Madrid. Rodrigo, I am in the chat. Good to have you on the chat. Good to have you back. Kindly like the broadcast. Rodrigo, comeback versus Man City to cold. They are revisiting some memories. Then Testa says Bafana can do well. They got a good team. The only thing is that towards the end, they always fail to win games. Sometimes, yeah, they've been characteristic of that. It's one of those teams that on paper will play a very good game, but then sometimes get nothing out of it. Saudi Arabia has formalized a bid to UEFA to allow the top two teams in Saudi Arabia, in Saudi Arabia, in the league to join the Champions League starting 2027. UEFA is still considering the proposal. Again, because it's all PR, it's all public relations. So let's just wait and see what kind of decision that they will take. But those reports have circulated in the last couple of weeks or spells that that there is a possibility that those clubs could be included in the UEFA Champions League. And remember, we now have an expanded tournament. However, the question will be, would it be still because basically UEFA takes care of European football. So once you expand it outside of Europe to Saudi Arabia, so my question would be, if let's say Africa were to apply, would you welcome the teams? Let's say the two teams that win the Confederations Cup and the African Champions League, would you extend the same courtesy if South American teams came calling? But anyway, it's all PR. There is money involved, and we all know that the Saudis are very rich. So they can sway. They could come in as huge sponsors, which means more money to participants in the UEFA Champions League, and eventually they get what they want, because again, like I said, it's all about PR. Pedri, they're asking you wanna be friends? What do you think? No. Why did you ask the question if you know the answer? Smart boy. Africa does not have a good big players. Let's be real. I would disagree with you. When you say it doesn't have good big players, that's a very subjective opinion. Because if every single year we have teams playing in the CAF Champions League and we have a team that wins it, you can't tell me we do not have big players. You see, you're as good as in the competition you're competing in. For example, I remember when factions of Messi, Ronaldo fans would have this debate, especially after Cristiano Ronaldo won the Euros in 2016, and they were saying that Messi had not yet won a trophy with Argentina, and I was saying, do you expect Argentina to come and play in the Euros? No, you can only win the competition in which you're playing. Yes, he's not won the Copa America, but do not draw comparisons just because this one has won Euros where Lionel Messi wasn't even playing, where he's not allowed to participate. So I would undercut that argument, but there's so many good players. That's why at the end of major tournaments in Africa, you have players switching to Europe. You remember Mohamed Zaget after the AFCON in Egypt in 2019 when he joined Aston Villa. So that's just one example. But scouts are always out here. Scouts, agents, club, sporting directors are trying to look for young African talent to take and the reason as why it goes under the radar sometimes is because these players go through smaller clubs and then before they end up at bigger clubs. I look at a player like what's his name? Is at Leicester City, the Zambian international. His name is eluding me. But he first played in Austria. He was part of the Red Bulls Salzburg team that I think played in the under-19 Champions League. So yeah, you do have those kinds of Patson Daka. Yes, Patson Daka. So because they usually take longer routes in terms, look at how many African players are playing within French League One and and below. There's so many of those, and they come through from this side. So I have more knowledge than you. Maybe that could be true, but also sometimes names elude me. They go off my fingertips. And then you say, okay, I think okay. I read that comments. Like big names, thanks, Pedri, you're welcome. You guys are having your bromance on here. I mean, big names in football can disagree. You see, again, the big names are. You see, it's all branding. It's all branding. Some people have bigger names that are bigger than what they actually bring to the table. We all know that. So look at a player like N'Golo Kante. If N'Golo Kante was to be branded like some sort of global football superstar, how do you think he would be? But he's just not that character. He's just not interested in the camaraderie of the branding of itself. He's one guy that you would cross paths with and maybe even not notice that, oh, you are within the vicinity of N'Golo Kante, because he doesn't have that flamboyance. So it's a branding thing. It's a branding thing. So down here in Africa, players have not been branded as such, or have not branded themselves as such. That's why it's after they first cross to Europe that then they think on it, because then it begins to because of the kind of limelight that is on bigger leagues as expected, it then translates to an improved name, in that kind of sense. But when you go to Egypt, you had players like Muhammad Abdul Trika, play all their football there. I think Muhammad Hassan. You remember that Egypt side that went on to win 3 Africa Cup of Nations titles. That was in 2010, 2006, and 2008. So, anyways, away from that, why are you trying to say Madrid or Barcelona? They won't return to Africa, though. Okay, what you mean? Africa do not have money? End of debates. There's no place without money. Some places just have more money than others. So are you saying Europe doesn't have money just because Saudi Arabia is playing players more? You wouldn't make that argument. So you remember the time when China came in with the big money? Was it about China having money and Europe not having? No, it's not the case. But it is a true fact that in the dominant leagues in Europe, they pay higher than in Africa. But also, let's not forget that in lower leagues within Europe, there are teams in Africa paying better. Let's not forget that. In fact, a player who earns more money playing for young Africans or Simba in Tanzania than they would if they were playing in League One in the UK. So it's a case of that. It's a case of that. I'm talking about Salah and Mamouche. Again, look at Omar Mamouche. Again, his brand. Of course, Mohamed Salah has that big brand because he came from FC Basel, played for Chelsea, went to AC Roma, where they were really, really competitive under Rudy Garcia. He comes to Liverpool and he makes his name even bigger. But let's not forget, he has his fair share of criticism when it comes to his brand name, but he's a big brand. Sadio Mane is a big brand, but the reason as to why they've been able to elevate those brands to that stage is because they played at those levels at which they played. You played at a big club like Liverpool, you played in the Champions League, a season in, season out, so you get more visibility globally. So it improves on your brand name. What about Ademola Lookman? Is a big name. Yeah, Ademola Lookman is a big name, not as big as Salah or Sadio Mane, but it is a big name. But again, that's one of the advantages of playing in Europe, depending. But there are also many African players that are playing still in Europe, even within the big 5 leagues, and their names are not sounding. For example, if you're playing, just take this example, if you're playing for a club like Monza, your visibility cannot be compared to a player playing at Juventus or at Inter Milan. Basically that's what it boils down to, really. He plays in Europe, not Africa. See, we do not know anyone in Africa, so they won't join the. Now, you see, what you're saying that you do not know anyone in Africa, it's compare it to this: a lack of evidence is not an absence of evidence. Just because you can't find something does not mean it doesn't exist. So basically, you're saying just because you do not know those players, then they do not exist. Really. So I wouldn't look at it that way. I wouldn't want to look at it that way. But yeah, that would be my argument about it. You say I'm saying big players in Europe won't return to Africa. What do you mean they won't return to Africa? They always return. Didier Drogba returned. Yaya Toure returned. Mikel Obi returned. Okocha returned. Samuel Kufo returned. Those are all big names. Nwanko Kanu returned. So they do return. They do return. They do return. They do return. Yes, some would prefer to stay over there in Europe. Some would prefer to stay over there in Europe, but they eventually return home. They eventually return home. So let's not forget that. Let's not forget that. Okay. Do you know a player called Rowan Williams? Do you know a player called Rowan Williams? So, by the way, in any case, the World Cup in 2010 in South Africa should, paint for you a bit of that picture. Okay, anyways, let's see what other comment. Tester, African players has changed the game of football, especially in the Premier League. You guys do not understand what I'm saying. You think I'm saying African players are bad. No. Maybe he misquoted you, but I understand what you're trying to say personally. So just because you do not know the players doesn't mean they are not big. And by the way, you forget this. If you're consuming, let's say, media within Europe, chances are you're going to predominantly know what's within Europe. If you're consuming media that is from the US, chances are that's what you're going to know. So, for example, if we brought a basketball fan from the USA, they're going to know more about basketball than football because that's what they follow most. So if you're not following African media, you're not going to know African players. Basically, that's it. And how big their brands are, you know. I'll give you an example. There's a player called Alan Okello in Uganda. He's played for teams like Esperance here in Africa. At some point, they wanted to take him to Scotland, although his team at the time, KCCA, thought it was a bit too early. He currently plays for Vipers. He's a big name. He's a big name in Uganda. The former Uganda Cranes goalkeeper, Dennis Masindo Onyango, you know, he's one of those that have been featured in the advert for, you know, the African Nations Championship, you know, alongside Victor Wanyama. And then the other is Moro Shongasa from Tanzania. So just because you do not know them, it doesn't mean they do not exist. Basically, that's what I'm trying to say, you know. Today, if let's say you ask me about a Real Sociedad player that I do not know, it doesn't mean just because I do not know the player, it doesn't mean they do not exist, you know. Look at it that way. It's just not because their name is not big, you know. For example, ask Premier League fans, ask them of a player like Takefusa Kubo, very good player over there at Real Sociedad, you know, also played, I think, for Rayo Vallecano. But because those Premier League fans are probably not following much of La Liga, they're not going to know the player. But just because they do not know him doesn't mean he's not big. And the players they are going to get to know are these players they get to watch, you know, face their teams in the UEFA Champions League. That's why people know more players from Barcelona, Real Madrid than they would know players from Girona. Girona, just a season ago, were playing in the UEFA Champions League. But how many Girona players do you think are known, you know, really by these other fans? You won't find that there won't be many. You'll find that there won't be many. So it boils down to that. You know, that would be my argument for it. You say, okay, I think I read that. Okay, that's not what I'm saying. Okay, see, so what are you saying? LFC, hi, how are you doing? Good to have you back on the podcast. Liverpool fan over there. I'm saying big players in Europe won't return to Africa. Like what players? Give us examples and say, you know, Mo Salah won't return, Sadio Mane won't return. You know, just give us names. Maybe then we'll understand you better. Then also, okay, okay, I get. Okay, Mr. Tribe is too passionate. Let me see. I don't want to. Mr. Tribe is too passionate about Africa. He thinks it's better than Europe. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying Africa is better than Europe. I'm telling you, I'm acknowledging facts. So I've told you that, of course, when a player goes to Europe, they earn more than they would earn in Africa. Let me give you an example. A player will earn more if they leave Uganda and go and play in Tunisia. They will earn more if they leave Uganda and go and play at a club like Simba or Young Africans just next door in Tanzania. A player will earn more if they go to play for a club like Gor Mahia or Azam in Kenya. They will earn more. A player will leave Uganda and go and play for APR in Rwanda, and they earn more. So it's just that. That's a fact, you know. So I cannot be, let's say, feel maybe a certain way about Rwanda just because players go out there and earn more. So it does happen. What you say is true, that players leave Africa and go to Europe to earn more, because also it's a bigger stage. Those leagues are bringing in more money. That's a statement of fact. But I've also told you that it is true that there are some players in Africa who earn more than players who are in Europe, especially players that are in lesser or lower leagues, you know. So that's also a statement of fact. It's not about being passionate about Africa and, you know, thinking that, you know, Africa is better than Europe. Okay, if Africa is better, if I were to make a statement that Africa is better than Europe, you would ask me in what, so that I give you context. You know, for example, I'll give you an example. I'll tell you, for example, that Uganda is better than Spain, and then you ask me in what terms, and I'll tell you in climate terms. In climate terms, that I'll say, for example, Uganda has better climate than Spain. So you may dispute that, or you may argue against it, or you may even acknowledge that that's true, but it doesn't mean that overall as a country, then Uganda suddenly is better than Spain, because Spain, in many aspects, other than climate, is better than Uganda. So look at it in that perspective. in simple terms like that. So, and I hope you do get the message. They do not return. Trust me. It's only two players you named. I'm just giving examples. I'm giving examples. Testa is giving an example of Samoa Gyan. Look at a player like Benny McCarthy. He's now the head coach at the Kenya national team. Exactly, Pedri. Yes, Robert, I'm back. Good to have you back. There is no football back home. Football is there. It's just not at the same level as maybe you would want it to be. And that's a statement of facts. It's the same way leagues around, even within Europe, to say it's a Premier League, La Liga, German Bundesliga, Italian Serie A, French League One. It's just a mere statement of fact. We all know that the Belgian league is weaker than the Premier League. We know the Austrian league is weaker than. That's why when it comes to the UEFA Champions League, some teams qualify directly, others come through playoffs. It's just a statement of fact. I see no qualms about that. So, but when you say there's no football, that's a total lie. There's football. Even in Burundi, which is one of perhaps the poorest countries, and by that I mean poorer than Uganda, essentially, there's football. We do have football in Uganda. We do have a domestic league that has 16 teams playing in it. I know they are looking to change, the format and everything in certain aspects, but there's football. Go to the Kenyan Premier League, football is there. Go to Tanzania, even Somalia, that has been, ravaged by war, has always had some football. Eritrea, Djibouti, these are countries where our coaches and players go and play. Football is there. It's just not at the level that you maybe would have loved it to be. Because, for example, South Africa has arguably one of the best domestic leagues in Africa here. Egypt, Tunisia, Morocco, Algeria, years gone by, Libya was one of those teams, For example, we have a player called Joseph Benson Ochaya. He once played in Ghana at a club called Asante Kotoko. We've had players leave Uganda to go and play in the DRC Congo because there's football, Then you say, yes, he is a goalkeeper for Sundowns. Yes, Rowan Williams is a big name. But just because Pedro doesn't know Rowan Williams, it doesn't mean he's not a big name. Rowan Williams is a big name in South Africa. All those Mamelodi Sundowns players are big in South Africa. Those Kaizer Chiefs are players. Those Orlando Pirates, You see, usually the size of the name of the player in terms of being known and visibility also is tied to where they play. So players from Mamelodi Sundowns have their names more sounding than players from SuperSport United, So it just happens that way. The same way you'd compare a Barcelona player to a Rayo Vallecano player. They are all playing within the same league, but we all know that Lamine Yamal today is a bigger name than any player at Real Mallorca, So that's how I would argue that out. I feel unsafe. Why are you feeling unsafe? Okay, everyone is turning against me now. No, nobody is turning against you. We just simply counter arguing whatever you're putting forward. It's not turning against you. It's a conversation. It's a debate. It's a matter of opinion. So accept it in the faith that it does come. It's not an attack on you as an individual. Bro, I love you so much. Thank you. Look, that's Luca. You have to be a girl to marry. Come on. Pedri, relax. Do not take it that far. Why are you angry? Chill. What the F, Luca? I ain't angry. I'm joking. All Girona players are known. They're known to you. They're known to you, So you are the server. Mr. Tribe, can you put Lamine Yamal's song? It's called Shake Body. Copyright will strike us. We will be struck by copyright. I do not know the song particularly, but Tribe, read comments. I'm doing my very best. Oh, the shoe polisher, Bye. That's Real Madrid Rodrigo. Thank you for being with us today. See you tomorrow. Back for the wedding. Do not forget. Okay. See ya. Mr. Tribe, Luca. Relax, Chief. Anyways, but yeah, thank you for the debate, guys. I keep saying this. The reason as to why by the platform, guys, is called Football Tribe. And if you see our mantra, it says for the fans, by the fans, is because we come here and share information, we get to learn from each other. It's not predominantly because I think I know more than you do. There's a lot of fans that know more than I do. The players that you bring the know to me, same way I bring them to the know of you. Perhaps some of you, your consumption of football could be even on a bigger scale than my own. So that's the kind of platform that we are trying to share. I can see there's a comment says Ben McCarthy, Stefan Pena. Yes, that one did play for Everton and Tottenham Hotspur. I came from South Africa to the Premier League a long time ago. That's true. So, what's the when are you? Jesus Christ! I didn't even know Luca was from Croatia. Maybe that had slipped my mind. But anyways, all jokes aside. So yeah, that is the community that we are trying to build. A community that allows us to share without belittling each other, with us learning from one another. I think you guys will attest to the fact that that when I do not know something, I tell you outrightly, openly, and I say I do not know that player. Maybe I'll read more about them, or I'll do my research and that kind of thing. So it simply means to say that I do not know it all. That's why we are learning from one another, and that's why I oftentimes appreciate your invaluable contribution. You do not know how much you feed into me in terms of football knowledge, just as much as I think I feed into you guys. So it's not a one-way traffic kind of thing. In other words, I would say let's close the comments, and it's what a one-way ended conversation, but the mere fact that you guys are very active and engaging, that when I forget names like Patson Daka, you can easily, put them down in the comment section, and, we get on with the debate with the facts that we wish to put forward. If tomorrow we are speaking about Takefusa Kubo and some people are wondering who that is, I'm sure Pedro will be quick to remind them that this is a player that has a history with Real Madrid, played at Real Mallorca and is doing things at Real Betis, at Real Sociedad, although I'm one of those who thinks that he needs to add more goals and assists to his name to take things to the next level. So like that. So let's keep learning from one another. Otherwise, just imagine every squad. Let's say every squad has a minimum of 25 players, at times 20 in one simple league. How many players are those? 25 times 20 is how many? That's around what? 5? Is it about 500 players? What we are looking at, replicate that in the Italian Serie A, replicate it in the Spanish La Liga, replicate it in French League One, or the Bundesliga has 18 teams, and like that. So you can't. It's very hard that one will know it all, across board like that. There is an ex-footballer. He has a YouTube channel. Watch him. His channel is called The Optimistic Concept. He does live streams. I'll join his later. Can you join as well? He talks about football and life. He said the channel is called The Optimistic Concept. I'll look them up. And I check them out. I do consume a lot of content. Content creators consume a lot of content. Usually that's the idea anyways. So guys, anyways, I think we've discussed most of the things we wanted to discuss. The Chan, we've discussed Alexander Isak. We've discussed although you dragged us into that debate or the whole debate about the difference in football when it comes to Africa and Europe and everything in that regard, but it's all good. It's all good. Okay, this is just coming in from multiple sources, but I'll kick things off with David Ornstein, who says RB Leipzig view Newcastle offer for Benjamin Sesko as insufficient, and Newcastle proposal worth 75 million euros plus 5 after RB Leipzig asked interested clubs for 75 million euros plus add-ons plus a sell-on, future sell-on clause. That's, I think, what they mean. Manchester United pursuit also continues, but no bid yet. A 22-year-old undecided. That's the keyword, undecided. So he's not chosen United over Newcastle at this stage. And then that news is further emphasized by Ben Jacobs, who says RB Leipzig have rejected Newcastle's bid for Benjamin Sesko. 75 fixed fee met their quoted valuation, but overall package not deemed acceptable in terms of both total and structure. RB Leipzig not yet dropping their demands from when Arsenal were working on the transfer before Gyökeres. Manchester United yet to bid, but remain in the race, having held a club-to-club and player talks. RB Leipzig hoping, and some sources saying waiting for a Manchester United offer to create competitive tension. I mean, this is exactly what we're talking about, that all this only works in RB Leipzig's favor because they know Man United are interested and Newcastle are very serious about the player. So at the end of the day, they create a bidding war. They get their valuation to be met. They get more favorable. I think this deal is going to boil down to who is offering more favorable terms, especially when it comes to a payment structure. Because the 75 million euros does meet the evaluation of the player in terms of guaranteed fees. Maybe they think the add-ons should be a little more, but also it's to do with the structure. When it comes to the structure of the deal, we're talking about things like how much money is paid upfront, then the balance is paid in how many installments, in what period of time. Usually, it's that kind of conversation. So let's say Newcastle are suggesting that we'll give you 35 million euros upfront, then the 40 comes in maybe 4 installments of 10 million euros after every 6 months, and we have the money paid in the next 2 years, and it's done. Man United could come with an offer that we are giving you 40 million euros upfront, then we pay the balance 35 in 2 installments, maybe in a space of 1 year. So every 6 months, you receive something like 17.5 million euros. So those are better payment structures that Man United would have brought on table. But also, there's a question of a future sell-on clause. What percentage are Newcastle offering? Is it a 10%? Is it a 5%? What a Manchester United willing to offer? Is it a 15%? So those are the nitty-gritties of details. But at the end of the day, everything else, for everything that happens between the pursuit of Benjamin Sesko on the side of Manchester United and Newcastle, it's only going to work out to the best interest of RB Leipzig. That's what it's going to boil down to. And that's what makes you think that perhaps Newcastle should have acted much faster in as far as the transfer window was concerned. But also, I do not want to put it against them entirely, because they did try to push for certain deals, and they just did not go their way because they've had a lot of rejections from player sides and things like that. So I do not want to lay all the blame on them. Otherwise, if Dennis Dukes, the Newcastle fan, was here with us, he would be, giving us perhaps a deeper insight on how things have gone the way they've gone so far in this transfer window on the part of Newcastle. You say, okay. MD Ashik says, hello, how are you doing? You're invited. I do not be lied to. By the way, the person you're telling is invited did request for a visa to Uganda. And I was telling them I'm not in charge of that docket. But anyways, so you remember the deal that because when Arsenal were in the pursuit of where I want to disagree with Ben Jacobs, what was widely reported was that when Arsenal are trying to push for the player, they were asking for a total package of 90 million euros. Now they softened their stance according to Fabrizio Romano to about 85 to about 80 to 85 million euros. So I do not buy the fact that that Leipzig not yet dropping their demands from when Arsenal are working on the deal, because maybe what then takes them back is the fact that Manchester United has entered the conversation. But if you're only dealing with Newcastle, you'd know that Newcastle is a tier 2 team in comparison to Manchester United when it comes to financial muscle and resources. That's how I would look at it. Really, no disrespect to Newcastle whatsoever. So let's wait and see how things will develop on that front. Otherwise, things are really happening. In as far as that deal is concerned, the expectation is that Newcastle will go back, because Ben Jacobs adds on to say, although RB Leipzig haven't lowered their price all summer despite clubs believing this would happen, the fixed fee has been met by Newcastle and very intentionally. The 75 million part of their offer was made after RB Leipzig quoted the figure only 72 hours ago. Payment terms, add-ons, and an agreed sell-on did not meet RB Leipzig's expectations. However, RB Leipzig sources say it was higher than any other club this summer. Newcastle considering whether to improve. I mean, it's a bit of a risk for Newcastle, but Newcastle would choose to hold it out because what they risk is losing the player to Manchester United, which again wouldn't be good to them. But if by the way it was only one team, I think with those terms, chances are RB Leipzig could have accepted them. But because RB Leipzig are still waiting for that official bid from Manchester United, excuse me, and it has yet to come in, that's why things are a bit of at a sticking point. And perhaps Manchester United were being intentional in delaying their offer to wait and see at what level Newcastle come in and see where to improve and try and make, offer a better deal and that kind of thing. So anyways, let's wait and see. And Nuri Sahin, top of the list at Besiktas in case the club decides to part ways with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. Remember, Nuri Sahin was sacked at Borussia Dortmund and replaced by Niko Kovac. Then reports regarding Orlando Garnacho linking him with a move to Besiktas are all wide of the mark. He would love to join Chelsea. Armando Broja has completed the first part or the main part of his medical to join as a Burnley player from Chelsea. Now, I saw figures being quoted about Armando Broja, about 25 million pounds. I do not know in what world Armando Broja is worth 25 million pounds. We are talking about a player that has not scored even 25 Premier League goals in about 4 seasons. We're talking about a player that didn't score a single goal for Everton, because when you look at his numbers, by the way, they're so horrible. Nothing would persuade any club in their sane mind to be paying 25 million pounds to Chelsea for a player like Armando Broja. Allow me to read out some of the figures that I earlier put out on my X handle. What justification would a team have to pay 25 million pounds for Armando Broja, who is almost always injured, by the way, never scores? Last season, 10 games, 0 goals for Everton. 2023-2024, for the second part of the season, he was on loan to Fulham, 8 games, 0 goals. At Chelsea, in the first part of the season, 2023-2024, 13 games, 1 goal. 2022-2023, 12 games, 1 goal. That's for Chelsea. So that's 2 goals, Then you have to look back to 2021-2022 when he played 32 games for Southampton and scored 6 goals. Now, if you score 6 goals in 32 appearances for a striker at Southampton, that's as many goals as Gabriel Magalhaes scores as a defender. That's as many goals as possibly Joshko Gvardiol could score for Manchester City. Maybe even Rodri, That's as many goals as more than Dani Olmo is going to get, really, you look at those numbers and you think to yourself, those are the numbers, and you're paying 25 million quid for Amado Broja, even if he was 19 years of age. Buy him for 10 million pounds at most, 12, with a big future sell-on clause. Otherwise, it's a huge risk for Burnley. He will have to prove me wrong. He will have to definitely prove me wrong. But I feel he's too injury prone. And then Son Heung-min deal is yet to be sealed. Is set to be sealed soon. He's very optimistic of joining Los Angeles Football Club after he made the decision to part ways with Tottenham Hotspur after 10 seasons at the club. One of the most loyal players at Tottenham Hotspur have had over the years, and he's always come good. He's always come good. He's been arguably one of the best Premier League players that there has been in the last 10 years. Okay. Oh, sorry. Why do you say I want Uganda to win Africa Cup of Nations? Because I want you to be happy. When you're happy, you can a happy life. Rodrigo says, bro, sorry, but you weren't invited. The party tribe is buying. I read all those. Okay, let me see. CAF Champions League is also a big thing in Africa, similar to the Champions League in Europe, or the Copa de Libertadores there in South America. It also has group stages, and most of the time Egyptian teams meet South African teams in the final. If you do not read the comments, I will take from you. I have money. Please take him with pleasure. Take him with pleasure. Go have yourselves the best fun that you can ever have. Anyways, so really, I mean, guys, what do you think about Amado Broja to Burnley? For me, I feel if it is true that they are paying 25 million pounds for him, I believe that could go down as one of the worst negotiated deals in modern transfer football. Because really, tell me one good reason why any team in their sane mind would be paying that much for Amado Broja. Not in a million years. Not in a million years. Is he worth that? You know, I mean, but anyways, when it comes to Tottenham Hotspur, I believe they're going to be losing a very, very solid soldier. I do not think by his first season, by the way, at Tottenham Hotspur, which was 2015-2016, there's no other single season where he did not manage to make double digits when it came to goals and assists. There isn't a goal, like assists and goals and assists combined. There's no single other season. In fact, when you look at the goal study, it's his debut campaign that he scored 4, that you would compare it to last season where he scored 7. But all the other goals, or all the other seasons, it was scoring 14, 12, 12, 11, 17, 23, 10, 17. That's how reliable a performer he's been. And he's going to be a huge miss for them, really, really. But they have to move on. They have players like Muhammad Kudus. They have players like Brandon Johnson. They are still in the market to try and bring in more recruits. So let's wait and see how it will all go down with that Thomas Frank side, who seem like they will be playing with the low block against big teams when it comes to those big matches in the Premier League next season. Anyways, guys, it's been 1 hour and 18 minutes of us doing this. Why don't you allow me wish you a blessed night, and we'll wrap this one up. King Lotto, hi King Lotto. What do we think of Tottenham versus what? Tottenham versus Newcastle tomorrow at 2 p.m. East African time. I believe it's going to be a bit of a physical game. Newcastle, we know them to be a bit of riffraffs. You saw what Jolinton did to Max Dorman. We all know Bruno Guimaraes, a bit of a riffraff. Steven Botman, Dan Ban, Fabian Schär, the bit of a rugged side. Then Tottenham want to build themselves into that kind of team based on what the little I've seen for Thomas Frank. he doesn't want to get his players to be knocked over, simply. So they'll try and play with. I think actually it will be interesting to see how they do play. Against a team like Newcastle, where while Newcastle are as big a threat, they are not as big compared to Arsenal when it comes to the context of the game itself. And no, sir, I hate Tottenham. I'm an Arsenal fan. King Lotto. Unfortunately, you lost to Tottenham the other day, so I had to mention it because that's the team that Newcastle are playing tomorrow in their final pre-season tour game there in Asia, in Singapore. For me, Alexander Isak is not worth 120 million pounds. He is similar to Harry Kane. They wait for the ball to come to them in the box. Now, when it comes to King Lotto, please meet Testers of Life from South Africa. He's also an Arsenal fan. Earlier on, we had George Olpot from Uganda, Eastern Uganda, is an Arsenal fan as well. King Lotto, where are you joining us from? Kindly let us know. But more importantly, please like the podcast, but also consider subscribing to the channel while you're still with us. Let me answer these questions and we'll look to wrap it up, guys. When you say Alexander Isak is not worth 120 million pounds, I'm going to say yes and no. And for two reasons, guys. Hear me out on this one. By yes is depending on who you compare him with. So if you're comparing him to Harry Kane, then indeed, given what Harry Kane's pedigree had been, then you say because Harry Kane went for about 100 million euros to Bayern Munich, then he's not worth that. But when you look at the current market, where Liverpool have paid 100 million pounds guaranteed fees to Bayer Leverkusen for Florian Wirtz, then you will agree that Alexander Isak is then worth that, So that's the only way I would be able to explain it. So that's where my no part comes in, to say that no, he is worth 120 million pounds, because we're talking about a Premier League proven player. Whether he's a fox in the box, which I do not agree, by the way, with, he's not afraid of, drifting back to carry that ball inwards, making the ones from a little bit deep, He's not the traditional striker. And by the way, even Harry Kane has sort of adapted his game to drift backwards a bit. At the end of the day, it depends, because different managers play different systems. Today, I was reading a comment, I think on X, about somebody trying to criticize Miles Lewis Kelly, comparing him to Nuno Mendes and I think Akraf Hakimi and who else? No, he compared him to Nuno Mendes and Marco Correa in regards to how they apply themselves at left back. And of course, I think Nuno Mendes is a much better player as a left back. Maybe even Marco Correa could be better than Miles Lewis Kelly. But two, I'll say two things. That one, Miles Lewis Kelly is not a natural left back. He is developed as a midfielder that has been pushed to left back, same way Alexander Zinchenko was pushed to left back at Manchester City, and he's predominantly played there at club level, while really is playing in the midfield at the national team. So then the other is how the manager, within the system in which you're playing, wants you to apply yourself. So I would say there are similarities in the way that Marco Correa applies himself and the way with Miles Lewis Kelly applies himself. And I made the comparison that look at how Arsenal use their right wing as compared to how they use the left wing. So there's a bit of context there to bear in mind. King Lotto says we need to get ASAP. That deal is being worked on. Negotiations continue, but as yet to make an official bid. I was learning today that Arsenal prepared to make a bid worth about 55 million euros, which I believe would be turned down by Crystal Palace, if indeed it is true that it will be worth that. But let's wait and see. Let's give it a couple of days. Then if British is worth 100 million pounds, then Isak is worth that much. Then Isak is worth that much. He's admittedly a game changer for any team. I certainly agree with you with that, King Lotto. Yeah. Really, we forget that Jack Grealish cost £100 million. So let's not forget Moises Caicedo cost 115. Yes, different roles, but when it comes to, let's say, importance to the team, you would say they sort of match up. And so if he's going for that, why not Isak going for the other? They are busy in negotiations apparently, so let's hope we can get the deal done very soon. That's the hope. But Jack Wilshere didn't perform for the money Man City paid for him. Now, a player performing to the magnitude of what his transfer fee was is always up for debate. Is always one that players may never fulfill, but at the time of being bought, that's their valuation, and that's what the buying club made. So, for example, a lot of people criticize, for example, Nicolas Pepe coming in from Lille to Arsenal, worth £72 million. People think he didn't live to that. We all know about Darwin Núñez. He's a player who's spoken about literally all summer at Liverpool. I do not think what they paid for him to get him is lived to that in terms of, if you're comparing a value for money. Jack Grealish is that other example that we are using. You remember a player called what's his name? And Ndombele at Tottenham Hotspur, he didn't live to that expectation. So those things happen. Unfortunately, they do happen. You look at Fabio Vieira at Arsenal. I look at Coutinho when he joined Barcelona. Look at that. Even Ousmane Dembele when he left Borussia Dortmund to join Barcelona, did he live to those expectations? But if somebody told you that he cost a PSG only 50 million euros, and you look at the kind of football he's played for them, well, he's worth more than 50 million euros at present day. So, football prodigy says at Messi or Ronaldo, I wouldn't choose either. They're both great players, all legends of the game in their own respects, all winners. They just continue to give more to the football world, possibly more than we deserve. Lionel Messi is still smashing it at Inter Miami. Cristiano Ronaldo was top scorer last season in the Saudi Pro League at Al Nassr. So, what more praise can we? So, for me, I wouldn't want to choose. I do not want to reduce the debate to a choice of one or the other, really. Okay, what do you think about Gyökeres? Apparently, Swedish fans think he's better than Isak in the national team. I think he's scored more goals than Alexander Isak. I would say he's been more effective than Alexander Isak. You see, I'd compare this. I think it was yesterday or the other day when somebody asked me to compare Leandro Trossard and which other player. I think it was Eberechi Eze. I seem to forget the exact player they asked me to compare. Sometimes some players are just simply more effective. For example, when you look at a player like Cristiano Ronaldo, when it comes to crossing that ball over the line, present day, he's still one of the best that there is. But when you look at Alexander Isak on that ball, in terms of carrying it, dribbling past opponent players, skillfully, he easily does that better than Victor Gyökeres. So there are aspects of the game that Gyökeres is better at as compared to Alexander Isak, and there are aspects of the game that Isak is better at as compared to Victor Gyökeres. But I wouldn't disqualify their view that they feel that Gyökeres is a better player than Alexander Isak. So it's a matter of opinion, really. The same way you and I would, let's say, have a difference of opinion on who, for example, there's a day somebody was asking me, between Cesc Fabregas and Santi Cazorla, who would you choose? And I'm like, Jesus Christ, did you have to make that comparison? Because they're both great players, they can play in the same team. But if I had to choose one, I ended up not choosing. Not because I couldn't choose, but choosing one would rather simplify the debate for what it would be. If I had to choose between them, if you're looking for someone who is a team player, then I choose Messi. But if you're looking for someone who has accomplished more in every club, he's been Ronaldo. You see, there's that there's that line of argument because Ronaldo has played in the Premier League, Spanish La Liga, Italian Serie A, and he's hacked it all the way. He's gone to the Saudi Pro League, he's still hacking it. While Lionel Messi predominantly did it at the Spanish La Liga, had a couple of, was it what, about 2 years in the French League One, and then he ended up at the Major League Soccer. So really, yeah, it depends on what factors you bring forward to make your argument. So based on those factors, I'd agree with Testa, but I know Pedri could be busy, typing for us a counter argument for that in his own right. So it's usually when the question is about choose one or the other, especially when with very, very good players, it sort of simplifies the debate. It's for example, it's like when somebody says Maradona or Pele. If you say Pele, it's as if to say Diego Maradona wasn't that good, but it's not always the case, So that's why I'm often reluctant to choose between two players, especially when it comes to very, very good players. But today, if you ask me, let's say about defenders and say maybe John Terry versus Rio Ferdinand, I would say John Terry. But again, it's not to say that Ferdinand wasn't a good player, but I believe Terry was better. Or if you ask somebody between Ricardo Carvalho and Sergio Ramos, who would you choose? I would say Sergio Ramos. Who is your favorite player currently in football? Wow, I don't think I'd thought of it that much, because as a football fanatic, there's a lot of players that I do appreciate, but presently, I don't even know. If I'm being honest, really, I don't think I have a favorite player at the moment, but there's a great deal of players that I appreciate in different positions. For example, this very season that we just concluded, I was excited by how Nuno Mendes applied himself at left back. I've been impressed by Michael Olise at Bayern Munich. He doesn't get the sort of media attention that the likes of Lamine Yamal have been getting at Barcelona. But wow, what a player he is! Lamine Yamal himself, I thought he's been very, very exciting and quite very entertaining to watch. What a player he is, really. So the more you look around, the Bradley Bacola, very exciting player. Desli Doe, very exciting players. Ousmane Dembele is practically doing things we have expected him to do 5-7 years ago. So he wouldn't count, But there's a lot of exciting players. So I do not think I have a favorite player at the moment. But when it comes to all time, then I think most people on the platform already know who that is. Arsenal really missed a big chance to get Olise at left wing last season. Yeah, for some reason, by the way, I feel that teams have slept on the job when it comes to signing certain players. The way Manchester United slept on the job when it came to signing Harry Kane, he was very willing to join them. But just like that, they let him go to Bayern Munich, Now, there's a player that I do not know why clubs are not making a move for him or have not made a move for him this summer. Actually, more than one player. A player like Ohan Sunset at Athletic Bilbao. A player like Kenan Yildiz at Juventus. Yes, they may come expensive, but I think they are worth it. I think they are worth the talent. They are worth the salt. So there's quite a number of exciting players out there. Testa says there are so many great players out there. If you want my favorite Arsenal player, I choose Bukayo Saka. Okay, okay. Let me ask you, Testa. If we were to rewind things back to the 2022-2023 campaign, where you had Bukayo Saka, Gabriel Martinelli, Martin Odegaard, all smashing it, William Saliba, Gabriel Magalhaes were all at the top of their game. Granit Xhaka, would you still choose Bukayo Saka? When you look at that season, specifically. So because I sometimes I've been led to believe that sometimes our favorite players change with time, especially with season, because some seasons there are players that are outperforming than others, not because they're more talented than those that you've liked previously, but just because that season things are just clicking out for them. You know, we could be here all, fussing around. For example, Rafinha. Look at Rafinha last season. Very, very good player. But because Lamine Yamal is young and was 17 and only turned 18 recently, Lamine Yamal oftentimes got the praises ahead of Rafinha, who I thought was, more important a player to Barcelona overall. Um, okay, yes, he was always our best player. The only who I would maybe say outperformed him was Aubameyang. You see, Emerick Aubameyang. So was a fan favorite at some point. But yeah, and particularly the attachment for Bukayo Saka has everything to do with him. Coming from Hell End, people still remember him. I think in that 2018-2019 season, when he was still donning the shirt number 77, coming out as a very little kid, looking exciting, taking on players almost in similar fashion the way Max Dorman is taking them on, and things like that. So people have an attachment to Bukayo Saka because they've literally watched him grow. The same way Barcelona fans are going to be really, really more attached to Lamine Yamal because they've followed his story, really from, the academy side into the senior team, and he comes on to, deliver at that level in that kind of way, But yeah, that's how I'd look at it. Because I do appreciate a great deal of a whole lot, many, many players. One of those players that I did appreciate very much back in the days was Isiko Alcaraz. He's still getting things done at Real Betis, but coming from Malaga, I think, to Real Madrid, every time I watch Isiko Alcaraz, he looked really, really exciting. Of course, he had some bad games and things like that, but I thought he was always a very good left-footed player. You look at players days gone by, players like David Silva, at Manchester City, very exciting. Even though you do not support those very teams, well, players always double him because our left wing is very weak with Martinelli, and center with Kai Havertz or Merino was even worse. I think I'm going to disagree with you a little bit, Kim. When it comes to Arsenal's setup, of course, Bukayo Saka is always the danger man in that Arsenal team. The way he takes on opponents, the way he carries that ball, the sort of physical grit that is added to his game, and his quality of finishing and level of finishing. They are always alive to his threat. But every time Arsenal played against Liverpool in the last couple of years, Liverpool were always aware of the threat that Gabriel Martinelli posed at Trent Alexander-Arnold. Unfortunately for Gabriel Martinelli, he's been unable to replicate the kind of form he had, particularly in that 2022-2023 season, when it comes to preciseness and effectiveness, scoring the goals and everything to do with that. But also, on a good day, Gabriel Martinelli can take on players, he can dribble past players, he can outrun players, and he can be a threat. But yeah, I do agree that he's not a similar threat compared to Bukayo Saka, and that is for that very reason that Arsenal fans are demanding for a new improved left winger, perhaps a person more better than Gabriel Martinelli. And for me personally, my choice for that would be Rafael Leao at AC Milan. 25 years of age, very, very good player, very effective. Yes, he may not give you, he may not be 100% throughout the entire campaign, but at least you can take a bet on him to give you an 85 performance out of a season overall. And I've said that I would rate him ahead of Rodrigo Goes, not in terms of natural talent, but when it boils down to effectiveness, when it comes down to build and his physical ability, when you look at the demands of the Premier League, when it comes to a counter pressing and are carrying teams forward. I do believe I'm inclined towards Rafael Leao ahead of Rodrigo Goes, who's been linked with a potential move to Arsenal this summer. I also enjoyed watching Olivier Giroud back when he was at Arsenal until World Cup. Now, you see, I think you're one of those Arsenal fans that, by the way, appreciated Olivier Giroud in ways that I did not appreciate him. There's an Arsenal fan. He's called Simon Peter. He's from Uganda. The way he defended Olivier Giroud. Now, for me, my quarrels with Olivier Giroud was a certain lack of effectiveness. I remember the time when Arsene Wenger signed Mesut Ozil, and the expectation was that he was going to sign a player like Luis Suarez. Never mind that he attempted and never got it done. But at that point, he needed a serious striker, a more serious striker than Olivier Giroud. But Olivier Giroud, by the way, I think I was watching. There's a Chelsea defender. I do not remember who. And he said he was always afraid of Olivier Giroud. Not because he was going to dribble past him, but he said no matter how well you defended against Olivier Giroud, he would find a way to score against you. And his numbers at the French national team show that even at club level. But if you do look back, one of the reasons as why Arsenal failed to win the Premier League title in 2015, 2016, it was partly because of Olivier Giroud. All those chances created by Mesut Ozil, and he failed to convert them. So Olivier Giroud is a bit of a sticky one for me, really. But I do understand your appreciation for the player. Then when it comes to Theo Walcott, Theo Walcott was a very good player, but sometimes he sort of, one too many times he fumbled the ball when he was going on with his speed and with it. But yeah, good player. And do not forget Robin Van Persie. I came to appreciate Robin Van Persie when he started having a stable seasons, because predominantly at Arsenal, he was sort of that injury-prone player. Very good player, but you knew he was going to miss a whole chunk of games throughout the season. And then when he started hitting the good numbers for Arsenal, that's when he left to join Manchester United in 2012. But very, very good player. Martinelli has been underwhelming. He is a spirit merchant with very lacking playing making and scoring abilities. By the way, again, you see, I get the feeling that part of unlocking Martinelli or locking him has to do with how sometimes Arsenal play. And if you looked at Arsenal last season, and I think the season prior to that, particularly last season, there's a way Arsenal are comfortable in scoring one goal and trying to defend that one goal, which was a very less effective strategy. So that also tied down to the kinds of results that your forward players were bound to give you. Let's not look at players in isolation of the systems within which they play and how managers want them to employ themselves. Because explain to me why a player that was capable of scoring 15 goals in a Premier League season can fail to score 10, So it means it has less to do with his abilities, but also the environment within which he plays. But also part of that is because of the so many injuries that Arsenal had last season, particularly, that affected how the entire team played. Because let's be honest, for example, Bukayo Saka is very comfortable playing with Martin Odegaard when they have Ben White overlapping on the right flank. He's very comfortable with that. That always works out for them. Every time Arsenal played with Alexander Zinchenko at left back, Gabriel Martinelli was less effective. The reason for that is because of the amount of work he needed to come to do in terms of defending to help back up Alexander Zinchenko. But if you do remember, every time he played with Takahiro Tomiyasu as his defender on that, as the left back, Gabriel Martinelli was very good. And that's the season we're talking about, 2022-2023, because it was oftentimes Takahiro Tomiyasu in that role. So, yes, Zinchenko played a good chunk of those games, but Takahiro Tomiyasu, why? Because it has to do with the kind of confidence with which you play, knowing that behind you, there's a secure person. If I do drop this ball, there's somebody that is going to help me recover it quickly, that I can rely on. There's also that in mind. And when you play with Alexander Isak, you're going to play with certain bets on if you're Gabriel Martinelli, knowing the capabilities of the left back that is, within your ranks here. Mazrou Skeli comes in last season. He's a player that he has to adapt to, or on how he does apply himself. They need to create a rapport, in a way. And when it comes to players creating partnerships, I do not really need to explain that to you, because I'm sure you know that these things happen in football. Some players are very comfortable playing with other players, and because they know the amount of confidence it gives them, and knowing that I have this trusted partner next to me. So that's how I'll put it. LFC says hi. King Lotto, you say Liao would be an excellent signing, but AC Milan I would want 80 million plus. I would say spend it. If you're willing to spend 78, 72 on Rodrigo Goes, go spend the 8 on Rafael Liao. That would be my belief. That would be my take on that. You say, okay. LFC says, yes, I'm back. It's good to have you back. King, you say Giroud was an amazing playmaker, but his scoring was so inconsistent. I loved watching Alexis Sanchez. I think all Arsenal fans loved watching Alexis Sanchez. Nova Bro, how is it going? Thank you, Nova Bro, for always sparing a moment to be with us. By the way, Nova Bro is one of our usual suspects here on the channel. Unfortunately for me, and for whatever reason, I've yet to know, he never spends long with us. He comes, he says hello, shares with us his greetings, a couple of minutes, and he's gone. I'm led to believe he's not a football fanatic like some of us are, but he always supports us on the channel. But thank you so much, Nova Bro. You say you have to say goodbye now, but have a blessed day. Thank you so much. King Lotto says, I do agree that Martinelli was much better when Xhaka was in the system. So yes, so you can see that it has a bit of context to it in terms of the players around that are surrounded by these players. So every time you have those changes, things are bound to change, and sometimes it's not for the better, really. Then Testa says, back in the day, Alexander Song and Bakary Sagna, Alexander Song Bilong was a trusted role tenant in that Arsenal midfield until when he decided to leave us to go join Barcelona. Martinelli is too injury prone these days. It seems as if anytime he returns, he lacks the pace that he once had. Also, he has only one attacking style. In football today, you need someone who creates. Players are built the way they are built. It's not really about him adapting his playing style, but yeah, that knee injury he suffered last season, but one. I think that was 2023-2024, has really had an impact on his performances overall. Similar to what happened with Martin Odegaard last season. I remember when he suffered that ankle injury earlier on in the season. He was never the same player, even when he returned. At the tail end of the season, things had started, clicking for him, because I think he ended up with about 8 assists in about 12 games across all competitions, but things had not been clicking for him for a good while. Look at a player like Gabriel Jesus, hampered by injuries. You look at Ben White, he's trying to catch up now, but when he had just returned from injury, that knee surgery, he was trying to get into he was still trying to get his mojo back. So look at Bukayo Saka. You see, when you've just returned from injury, you're bound to play with a certain level of reservation, because you know that any slight mistake, it could cause you to get back to the same sick bay that you just escaped from. So players are bound to play with a little bit of caution, really. When it comes to injury-prone, Gabriel Jesus is the most frustrating. This guy is a very good player. It's a big shame. Yeah, for Arsenal fans particularly, allow me to refresh back in the days, players like Vasilik Abdiabe, players like Jack Wilshere. I do not know why these days I often confuse Jack Grealish with Jack Wilshere, but Jack Wilshere, those were very, very good players. But injuries were the order of the day, and their careers were never the same, They never lived to their full potential because of injuries. Look at a player like Luke Shaw. If Luke Shaw could, he's a very, very serious, a very good left back, but because of injuries, he blows hot and cold. People forget a defender like Phil Jones, when he was coming in from, I think it was Blackburn Rovers, to join Manchester United. He was a very good defender. I remember Arsenal and Man United, pursuing a deal to sign him. At the time, Blackburn Rovers had a player called, I think it was Julian something. Another very, very good player that big teams tried to pursue. But Alan Smith at Manchester United, injuries. You remember Gabriel Obertan, guys? Do you remember him at Manchester United? He ended up, I think, at Newcastle, and I do not know where else. You remember Hatim Benafa? Had it not been for injuries, a player like Hatim Benafa at Newcastle, so really, so injuries do tend to antagonize these players. Do you have a favorite team? Do you play for Manchester? DFPD says, do you play for Manchester United? No, I do not play for Manchester United, but thanks for asking. D, kindly like the podcast, but also consider subscribing to the channel if you're new here. King, I'll say this: football is my favorite sport, so it's football coming first. When it comes to favorite teams, Arsenal is the team I support, and Real Madrid. But it's football first. So sometimes when I criticize Arsenal, people flinch and be like, "But you say you support Arsenal," and they forget that it's football that comes first. That I put on my objective lenses and look at the game in a manner in which fans that are often emotional may not have the capability to look at it in a way. Snoop Dogg, owner, Swansea Football Club. Yeah, not owner, but he's a part owner. He has some shares now in Swansea. And by the way, I think it's Ryan Reynolds that is attracting some of this in. Apologies for that internet glitch. I was saying, I think it's Ryan Reynolds that is attracting these stars, Hollywood stars, and the big guys from the US to start to come and invest in football over there. A real fan criticizes their own team, more than other normal time. No, what I meant to say by that is usually when fans tend to speak with emotions ahead of them, and yet when you sometimes put the emotions out of it, you're able to objectively look at things. And the reason as to why I say it's football first is because I will sit here and discuss Manchester United, and one may even start thinking maybe I support Manchester United, but just because I recognize the good things they do and all the bad things, doesn't mean it's my team, and that kind of thing. But yeah, the challenge usually with fans that put their clubs first is sometimes they are blinded to the facts or the things that are happening around the team. And usually for them, it's about, who scored, how they go, when it was scored, if they conceded, how did they concede, who is to blame. Basically, if they lose, they're looking for somebody to blame. If they win, they want to praise the goal scorer, and they're done with it. They tend to ignore all the other factors surrounding the game. And yet, usually, sometimes your team will lose, not because they played poorly, but because of one moment, a lapse in judgment that cost them the game. Look at that game against Arsenal and Tottenham Hotspur. It was one moment, I believe, personally, two things that you can read into it. A lapse in concentration for David Raya, playing that ball towards Miles Lewis Kelly, who was surrounded by 4 Tottenham Hotspur players, when he had William Saliba down on the right flank, practically begging for that ball. But 2, there was a foul on Miles Lewis Kelly. So just because the foul wasn't given, I've seen lots of people blaming Miles Lewis Kelly. They've said he's overly confident. Yes, he may be overly confident and is maybe sometimes drop the ball because of that overconfidence. But that particular incident was not because of his overconfidence. No, really. Because he was clipped by Richardson and he goes to the ground. If he was trying to drive that ball forward and he lost it, you would have that discussion, that it was out of overconfidence. But he got fouled. The referee did not give the foul. So it's like a fan is being blind to that particular moment where Richarlison fouls him and focuses on what he believes are the inefficiencies of Mazlou Skelly in that particular moment. And then also, they ignore the responsibility of David Raya, who has the full view of the entire pitch, being the last man for that Arsenal side. You have the full view of the pitch ahead of you. You have the ability to see where William Saliba is, where Mazlou Skelly is, where Yakub Kivyo is, where Bukayo Saka is standing further ahead, or Leandro Trossard or Gabriel Martinelli. You have all that, you know. So they sort of, you know, ignored that. Okay. King Lotto says, who do you think will be the team? Who do you think will be the team impress the most this season? Who do I think the team will impress the most this season? I think Martin Zubimendi is going to be a very exciting player. Now, for people looking for goal contributions, assists, and goals, he may not be that player for you, but I think he should be one of those players that you keep an eye on. If things happen for Victor Gyökeres, I know. If things click for Victor Gyökeres, I know most eyes are going to be on Victor Gyökeres for most fans. But I think Martin Zubimendi is a player to really, really watch closely for me. Then it's a little too early to say, but I think I was encouraged by what I saw with Christian Mosquera in his first game. I do not know how Mikel Arteta is going to go about Max Dorman. I wait to see. Ethan Nwaneri, this should be his season to take it a notch higher if given the opportunity. And then I'm waiting to see what Noni Madueke brings to the table in as far as Arsenal are concerned. But for me, the player that I'll keep my biggest eye on is going to be Martin Zubimendi, because he's going to be the key that unlocks it all for Arsenal. Really. Tester says, I have to appreciate every Arsenal player. They all make Arsenal who they are. And my reason for choosing Bukayo Saka, he is a player who impacts the game a lot, like Odegaard. You're right about that. I think I'll agree with you on that one. Without the game changers, then the game becomes hard to get momentum, to score. And King Lotto says, no, I mean you say, no, I mean teams like Nottingham Forest last season or PSG dominating. Okay. When it comes to that, teams to watch, this season, to be honest, I've not been really, really encouraged. But a team that I'm going to try and watch closely is going to be Sunderland, given the kind of business they've been able to do in the transfer window, and the kind of players they've been able to bring in, players like Granit Xhaka, players like Samuel Nadingra, players like Habib Diarra, and all the others. I want to see if Daniel Faki has sort of changed his mentality, or will change his mentality about how he goes about Premier League games. Because you remember when he got Norwich promoted to the Premier League, and he continued to play with the same system, the same style, and they ended up being relegated in similar fashion the way Vincent Kompany did with Burnley in 2023, 2024. So I think it could be one of Leeds or Sunderland that sort of surprises us a bit, because I'm led to believe that one of those teams may not get relegated this season. When it comes to Nottingham Forest, I wait to see their responsibilities on the continent could alter their overall performance in the season. So I do not have a huge excitement about them. Then the other team I'm going to watch closely is going to be Brentford because of Keith Andrews. He's a novice, so I'm really, really waiting to see how he does cope up. Otherwise, he's on cards of one of the managers that could get the earliest sack in the Premier League. I could be wrong, but he's one to watch. Tester says it ends up becoming a game where players are left defending attacks than attacking themselves. So when it comes to, do you think Zubimendi would be better than Partey for Arsenal? It will depend on how you view them. That's how I'll first put it. While their responsibilities may look the same, and the reason as to why I'm really excited about Martin Zubimendi, or I'm going to be watching him closely, is because of his overall interpretation of the game and how he does apply himself. He is not as fast as Martin, maybe Partey, but he is more intelligent. And then he is quick in driving that ball forward in terms of making a quick pass. And I remember it was one of the criticisms I had for Christian Morgat in that game against Tottenham Hotspur, because sometimes I felt that he delayed to release that ball, which sometimes affects Arsenal. Because usually when you're playing against teams like Newcastle or Tottenham Hotspur that may play with you a low block, every time you get on that ball, you ought to look to move it at a much quicker speed to try and destabilize them. Otherwise, if you move it at the speed with which you move Arsenal are doing it, you give them the chance to retreat and get well settled within their shape that usually turns into a back five, a block of 4 players, and with 1 player trying to lead the press. And depending on where the positioning of the ball is, that line of 4 players becomes 3. So one of them separates to come and join this other player to help with the press. But as soon as you advance any further, they sort of retreat back. So you need that quick thinking. And I think Martin Zubimendi is going to be able to offer that to Arsenal. So that's what I'm going to be looking out for. Of course, Arsenal are going to miss Thomas Partey, in my opinion, because I believe Thomas Partey was physically well built for the Premier League. The way he protected that ball, the way he had that long range pass. Martin Zubimendi is very capable of that, by the way. But physically, I believe that Arsenal could miss that physical side of Thomas Partey, and that's where I do feel that Declan Rice's responsibilities in helping Martin Zubimendi's wife could come, into account a little more. And then we may be likely to see the whole importance of signing Mikel Merino for that Arsenal midfield, playing alongside Martin Zubimendi. We could be, seeing that a lot more often. So let's wait and see. You say, let me ask you this tribe. Do you know Wrexham FC? Do you think based on back-to-back promotions, do you think they can make it to the Premier League? It would be a dream promotion, but the championship can be very difficult. 46 games you have to play across a season. I think it's going to depend on their recruitment. I've not followed it that much, but I saw they were trying to recruit one of those former Wolves players. I think it was Matt Doherty that they were trying to recruit. So it's going to depend more on that, because usually what they do is every time they've been promoted, they've been getting players that are more senior to the level at which they've been promoted to. And I was watching one of their, I do not know if it's former or still current team officials. He was speaking with Ben Foster on the Cycling Geek podcast, and he was saying what they were trying to do. For example, when they were at the non-league stage, they were looking to get players from the league upwards. So and you're convincing them to put, of course, paying them well to be at that level. I look at it this way: you're in the championship and you're signing Premier League players or players with Premier League experience, so that when it comes to the grit out of the championship, you already have players with that mentality, and it's what has helped them. I would love to see them promoted, but I do not know for a fact that they will be promoted. Really, it's not really an easy one to call. If their only trajectory is anything to go by, you would say that they would get promoted. But there's also a lot of good teams there. Usually the teams that have just gone back, Leicester City, if they do not lose majority of their players, they could have a say in this thing in terms of coming back. Ipswich Town, if they stick with Kian McKenna, they could have their say, but let's wait and see. You say the low block killed us. That's why we need players like Eze to break the middle. We rely too much on the right side. Yeah, that's true. I think Arsenal have that over-reliance on the Bukayo Saka wing. Let's see. That's why Arsenal looking to bring in Ebeleche Eze, players that can help break that low block. That's why they've signed players like Noni Madueke, a player that can take on players, can come at you with, that pace. Arsenal trying to really get it right. When I look at Arsenal, by the way, when I assess Arsenal, they've only added one player. That's how I look at it. So far, they've only added one player. And we're talking about a team that was short in squad depth last season, because basically what they've done, they've only made replacements. Where you lost Takahiro Tomiyasu, you brought Christian Mosquera. Where you lost Raheem Sterling back to Chelsea, you brought Noni Madueke. Where you lost goalkeeper Neto, you brought Kepa Arrizabalaga. Where you lost Thomas Partey, you brought Martin Zubimendi. Where you lost Jorginho, you brought Christian Nogat. So essentially, it's Victor Gyökeres that you've added to that squad. And so Arsenal are not much different from where they were last season. And if you ask me to assess them present day versus what they are up against in terms of Premier League opponents when it comes to Man City and Liverpool, that's why I still say Liverpool are the favorites to win this thing. And if things were to click for Man City, I'll still put Man City ahead of Arsenal. That's why I'm saying Arsenal still need to bring in at least 3 more players. But the third player would depend on a departure. For example, if you lose Alexander Zinchenko, then you definitely have to bring in a replacement. But they need to get an Ebelechi Eze or any other player in that attacking midfield role. Today, rumors were suggesting that they could switch their attention to Brahim Diaz if things do not work out with Ebelechi Eze. 2, you need that left winger. You really need that player. Otherwise, Arsenal won't be any different in terms of squad depth from where they were last season, because you're looking to move on players like Chris Nelson, you're looking to move on players like Fabio Vieira, and you're looking to move on players like Albert Sambilokonga, So it wouldn't have changed much, really. You say, okay, Zubimendi has got a different way of creating than Partey. That's true. He's good with that pass that breaks the lines, and he's quick thinking. Look at Martin Zubimendi, like prime Jorginho, like Sergio Busquets, a player that is not so physically imposing, but is not afraid to go in for duel, but has that quick thinking, anticipation of the game, can dictate the tempo of the game, can increase the tempo, can reduce the tempo of the game. In that aspect, that's your Martin Zubimendi. Yeah, he is different from Thomas Partey in many ways. Then you say it's too early to tell. Yeah, indeed, it's a little too early to tell. The only worry I have is that he likes getting red cards. Who likes getting red cards? Bring me up to speed. I think I don't know if I missed a comment, but bring me up to speed on who you are referring to when it comes to red cards. I do not think Zubimendi and Merino play well together. Merino is not a good midfielder. I'm going to disagree with you on that one. I think Mikel Merino is a good midfielder who has yet to fit in very well within the Premier League. And the reasons are simple, or the reason is simple. 1, he comes in, joins Arsenal, and as soon as he joins, guess what happens? In training, he suffers that shoulder injury. So that was a mistake. Then he gets a couple of games in that Arsenal midfield, which he was trying to acclimatize himself to. And then Arsenal lose, that was by the way by January, end of January, Arsenal lose Kai Havertz. So he's then converted into the de facto, a number 9 in that false 9 role. So his roles are shifted. So really, I do not think there's sufficient data for us to even judge his performances in as far as midfield is concerned, especially by account of last season. But what I've seen of him in pre-season, it looked good. I look at that game that they did play together against Newcastle, and it looked good. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't the best, but it looked promising. That's what I would say when it comes to that. That's what I would say. Then you say, okay, hi from Switzerland, Hussein Amadov. Hussein Amadov joining us from Switzerland. Hi to you too. Good to have you on the broadcast. King Lotto says, unfortunately, I do not think Arsenal will bring a left winger. Noni Madueke is the left winger Arteta will use. It's similar to when we needed a striker and Arteta got Kai Havertz. I do not think that's the case. One, again, it's going to depend on the market. It's going to depend on the market. But Arsenal are well aware that they need a left winger, and that has been widely reported on, even from the most trusted sources, really. So, and it has been reported time and again that their pursuit for a left winger is entirely different from their pursuit of Ebelechi Eze. That's for sure. So, if they do get in Ebelechi Eze, usually Arsenal tend to compromise. That, for example, when you get in a player like Ebelechi Eze, you will know that he can also play on that left wing, but then also you have Noni Madueke, who is brought for the right wing as a backup for Bukayo Saka. But if he is put to the left wing and he is effective there, then Mikel Arteta will roll with that one. He will roll with that one. And I'm not saying it's the best, case scenario, but should it boil down to that, it will be that way. But I think Arsenal are going to remain to opportunities in the market. And it's going to boil down to that. And the reason as to why they did not want to overspend, especially when it came to players like a striker, is because they wanted to create room within their budget that allows them to do other things in the market. So what would happen is, for example, is Arsenal may lose one of their current left wingers in Leandro Trossard or Gabriel Martinelli, and it doesn't look like it will be Martinelli if they are to get a top right left winger. That would be the sort of the speculative expectation that would happen in that regard. So, but I wouldn't rule it out entirely when it comes to the pursuit of a left winger. Then you say, Zubimendi got too many red cards at Real Sociedad? No, I wouldn't want to believe that. That's not true. Zubimendi getting too many red cards at Real Sociedad? No. No. That's not true. That's not true. Really. Let's look at those statistics. I'll be okay to admit if I'm wrong. He's played about 7 seasons. Actually 6. 7 seasons with Real Sociedad. Of course, maybe the first season you do not count because he only played 1 game. He's never gotten a red card in the Spanish La Liga. It's only in the 2022-2023 season where he got 12 yellow cards. That was 1 too many. In 36 games, he got 12 yellow cards. Then last season, he got 6 yellow cards. And then the season before that, he got 5 yellow cards. And then there's another season where he got 6 yellow cards, So, but he doesn't have red cards. Actually, in competitive games, he's never gotten a red card. So correct yourself on that one. It's not happened. It's about yellow cards, really. King Lotto says, okay. Testa says, I'm off now. I got to work a 14-hour shift tomorrow. Enjoy the rest of your evening, tribe, and everyone watching. I will be back tomorrow again. Thank you so much, Testa of Testas of Life, for being part of today's podcast. King Lotto, do you think we spent nearly 60 million pounds on Noni Madueke for him to be a backup, to be a starter? I think he will surely be a left winger. I mean, for 52 million pounds as total package, 48 million pounds believed to be the guaranteed fees. That's money that big teams are paying for backup players. That's money that teams are. Look at, people forget. Use the example of Manchester City. Look at the example of Liverpool by the present day. Do you think if they sign Alexander Isak, Hugo Ekitike is going to start? They're going to have a 70 million pound player on the bench. So that's the level at which you're competing at. So to have a 48 million pound player seated on the bench, really, Kai Havertz could end up on the bench for many games when Victor Gyökeres starts and is not accommodated in midfield as a revolving 10. He's a 65 million pound player. So I do not think the cost here is going to be a factor, really. Because look, Bukayo Saka has played so many games, and that's partly what led to that hamstring injury last season. So as Arteta and the entire Arsenal analytics team must know this, must be aware of these things, that they ought to rotate that team to reduce on the amounts of injuries that they were getting last season. And that's why they need a bigger squad. But a bigger squad means that you need good quality, so that if you withdraw Bukayo Saka, a player that you're bringing in is not half the player that you've taken off. You know, that's the objective really. The way Manchester City have been doing it over the years. Then you say, have a good night. Thank you so much, King Lotto, for being part of today's podcast. Thank you, every single one of you, for that have been managed to catch today's podcast. Arsenal rarely spend big. Besides Bryce, they were very reluctant to spend the money for Gyökeres or Sesko unless we sell many players, which it's been very slow. Arsenal like many big teams, they've had trouble selling players. Look at Manchester United; they've been no different when it comes to selling players. I think the only two teams that have done it well is actually three teams: is Chelsea, Liverpool, and Manchester City. They've sold well, but also look at the destinations to which they've been selling to. That could also be a factor. But yeah, big teams tend to struggle when it comes to moving on players. Their players. Because usually the teams that are liking them are sometimes lesser teams, you know. And if it is a lesser team, you're going to get lesser transfer fees. So, but their reluctancy to pay big money, part of their reluctancy was because of the kind of things, the sort of budget they have to deal with, and the number of players that they wanted to bring in this transfer window. Because I've seen multiple reports saying that the Kroenkes have told the club that whatever they do, they must operate within their means. That means the revenues coming through the club and out of players' sales is what should be catering for the recruitment, because they do not want the club to be at any point in risk whatsoever over the being in breach of the profit and sustainability rules in that kind of thing. But also, do not forget, last summer, Arsenal did not spend much. Besides bringing in Ricardo Carafiori and Mikel Merino, they did not spend much. You know, they did not spend much. So I think they've had a bit of leg room, and they could spend way over £200 million at this transfer window. It's you say it's baffling to me that they got Madueke, not Liao or Rodrigo. Very confusing business. Again, because probably you're looking at the wrong way. Like I've told you, Noni Madueke is what is brought in with the vision of being a Bukayo Saka backup. But if he gets given chance at the left side of the team and he thrives there, then so be it. But he is a backup for Bukayo Saka, because again, like I said, Bukayo Saka is overplayed really at Arsenal, at national team level. He's that player that oftentimes gets to play all the 90 minutes because there's not a potent backup for him and that kind of thing. So the deal for Noni Madueke has always been independent of their pursuits for what they want to do at the left wing. So, and then when it comes to Rodrigo, it's because Rodrigo has not come out to say, I want to leave Real Madrid. Real Madrid have not outrightly said they wanted to sell. Remember, they were going to play in the FIFA Club World Cup, so there was that period. It's a new head coach in Xabi Alonso. He needs to assess his own team and decide, okay, I need this one out, I need this one to stay. There's been that kind of thing. AC Milan equally are reluctant to sell Rafael Leao because he's really the big player that they have left in that team, alongside with the likes of the American Christian Pulisic. So it's not to say that Arsenal have not tried. They've made their inquiries, and I would want to believe that Andrea Barton knows what he's doing on this one. So the priority for them, knowing that at the left wing they already have Leandro Trossard and Gabriel Martinelli, while at the left knowing that at the left wing they have Gabriel Martinelli and Leandro Trossard, while on the right wing they only have Bukayo Saka with Ethan Nwaneri, who is predominantly a central attacking midfielder. Left them no encouragement. Remember, like I said, Raheem Sterling left, so they needed to find a replacement in the squad for Raheem Sterling. Look at it that way. That's what they were trying to look for. But also, Rhys Nelson, because they've yet to move on Rhys Nelson. If things happen right for him, he could also play at that left wing. So they have to bear that in mind. But when you look at that right-hand side of the pitch, they were really, really short. I think Max Dorman or Nwaneri would be excellent backup for Bukayo Saka. Age doesn't matter today in football. Look at Lamine Yamal. I think age matters because, and I'll say this, yes, you give the example of Lamine Yamal, but how many Lamine Yamals are out there today? There are not so many. You have these outliers, players that really come and excite at a very young age, but usually when you rely on young players, when push comes to shove, Arsene Wenger will tell you out of experience that, yeah, once you play with young players, you know there are games you're going to lose in the season. There are points you're going to drop in the season, not because your team was not capable, but because the lack of the experience in your young players that are going to cost you in certain games. So, and then Arsenal look at Ethan Nwaneri as an attacking midfielder centrally, more to the left wing, to the right wing. Remember, they also tried that out. And while he did fairly well, there are games where he was really cold, that it didn't happen for him. So they know. And if you're really, really trying to win major titles, you ought to think beyond the sentiments of saying, oh, I have this young player and I must make it work for them. So I think they are thinking beyond our own imagination when it comes to that. Then Max Dorman, until yesterday, we didn't know his abilities. You know, he's been reported on, he's been spoken about, but sometimes these young players are given a chance at the big level, and the assessment is boils down to the conclusion that while they are very exciting, they are not yet ready for that kind of level. You know, so Max Dorman, going into the season, they knew we have this kind of player, but they didn't know that after 45 minutes or 50 minutes played against Newcastle and Tottenham Hotspur, he would be that exciting, you know. So again, it's entirely different. And again, like I said at some point, that I'm waiting to see how Mikel Arteta handles the Max Dorman situation and whether he can find a place for him in that team. You know, if he can find a place for him in that team, well and good. But also, he's not going to. You're not going to put all your expectations on a 15-year-old. You know, you're not going to be playing against these Jollington guys that are clipping players literally clipping them for fun. And you think that Max Dorman is going to come and fare well if, let's say, you had Bukayo Saka out of the game for whatever reason, maybe for an injury scare, and you want to rely on Max Dorman. You know, so let's bear that in mind as well. While we are right to be excited about these young talents, let's not forget sometimes young talents have their own limitations. Arsene Wenger tried that on so many occasions, with young players. And oftentimes he burnt his fingers. When it came to grinding it out, you remember 2021, 2022, when Arsenal were trying to finish within the top four, it's the sheer lack of experience that it boiled down to when they came to losing games at the tail end of the season, losing to teams like Tottenham Hotspur. You remember that team that was riding on the shoulders of Bukayo Saka, Gabriel Martinelli, Emily Smith-Rowe, Martin Odegaard. It was so young. Ben White, it was so young. Aaron Ramsdale had just come to the team. Gabriel Magalhaes had only been at the club for one season. So it came to that, and that's what cost Arsenal that season. The lack of experience to grind it out at the tail end of the season. How many times has it come back to bite Arsenal? So they know, yes, sometimes you have outliers where age is not a factor, but it can be a factor. Let's be honest on that. Then you say, okay, you say have a good night, Arsenal. Really spending big. Okay, I think I read that. Okay, well, let's see if Arsenal buy a left winger. I'll be shocked if they do. We have experience and we still haven't won anything. Again, experience is built over time. I think you and I can agree that the William Saliba of his debut campaign, the Gabriel Magalhaes of his debut campaign, are not the Gabriel Magalhaes of today. And some of the things that have cost Arsenal are beyond just experience. Last season, it was injuries and a short squad that we can agree on. So it had nothing to do with the experience. In 2022-2023, the inexperience of the manager along with that of the players really did count, because you did not expect Arsenal to go and go 2-2 against West Ham. You did not expect them to go 3-3 against Southampton when you're pushing for a Premier League title. You didn't expect that. Then when you look at the 2023-2024 season, it was one game that literally cost them the title. That 2-0 loss against Aston Villa at the Emirates Stadium, because at the end of the day, they lost the title by 2 points. With Man City lifting it at 91 when they finished at 89 points. And it was in that season when they had a 2-all draw against Tottenham Hotspurs at the Emirates, and a 2-all draw against Fulham at the Emirates. But when they returned for the second part of the season, they won 18 games out of 19. Really. So sometimes in that very season, I look at it as they were just unlucky, really. They were really, really unlucky, because winning 18 games out of 19, those are the things that win you the Premier League title. But it just wasn't theirs at the end of the day. So, again, look at it that way. Maybe you draw to a different conclusion. But yeah, they built a reasonable experience within the playing squad when it comes to competing at the highest of levels. As the manager, sometimes his lack of experience at winning at the very top level has sort of showed in the kinds of decisions that he's made across the entirety of the season, not in just 1 or 2, 3 games. So it's part of that. Hopefully, Gyökeres can be the game changer. Hopefully, he can be that game changer. But again, if Arsenal do not find solutions in terms of players that can break the low blocks, it won't matter how good a striker you have, it will still affect you. And there's a couple of things that I think Mikel Arteta needs to tweak. And as reading about Ghana blog, he was saying that Mikel Arteta has been, during the training sessions, they've been trying to play more centrally, especially driving the ball with Martin Zubimendi, because they know they're going to have a target man like Peter Gyökeres, and that kind of thing. So let's wait and see how they fare. The 2 games against Villarreal and Athletic Bilbao in the Emirates Cup, I'll be eager to watch out for that. And I see, because those are the games where I get to test. Excuse me, because those are the games. I think out of battery. Hello. Yes. Okay. Still on. Anyways, like I was saying, Athletic Bilbao and then Villarreal. Those are the games for which Arsenal will get to really, really test how they will be setting up, because Noni Madueke is going to be returning. I think he returns on Monday, which is tomorrow at 1, to join the rest of the team to train. We will see. We will see in those 2 games how Arsenal plan to play with Victor Gyökeres, who starts. Is it Kai Havertz? Is it Victor Gyökeres? Is Kai Havertz accommodated in the team? What kind of effect does that have on the midfield or on the wingers, and everything to do in that line? But anyways, guys, it's been a very, very fruitful conversation that we've had. Let me sign out before my microphone runs out of battery. Thank you so much, Peter Parker. Thank you so much, Mace Pedri. Thank you so much, Luca. Thank you so much, Rodrigo. Real Madrid, Rodrigo, tester of life. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, King Lotto. It's been a pleasure having you as part of this podcast. Who else? Who have I missed? Agafanov, was it? Really? LFC, thank you so much for being part of today's broadcast, and every single one of you that managed to chip in, that liked the broadcast, that sent in your comments. It's been a pleasure doing this with you. I do appreciate you for the time you've taken to be with us. For those that are interested in learning some digital skills like coding, web design, and cybersecurity, do not forget to check out our friends at Ebosted. They do offer trainings, both in person and online training sessions for their recruits, and you do qualify for a 5% discount if you do enroll with them. They also help their trainees find jobs in the dynamic digital world. So, guys, it's been almost 2.5 hours of us doing this. I'm really, really grateful. I hope I didn't miss any. Nova Bro, thank you so much. You are part of today's broadcast. Sorry, I missed giving you that honorable mention. Who else? Luca. Luca, you are part of today's broadcast, so thank you so much. And every single one of you that liked the broadcast, that followed the broadcast, did not send in a comment, or did not like the broadcast, I still do not take your time for granted. For those of you that watch these broadcasts long after they've ended, I would not take your time for granted. We do appreciate you a great deal. Thank you so much for always dedicating the time to watch our content. Let's meet again tomorrow. I do not know what time it will be, but possibly late night after, like today, or sometime during the day. We'll make create time to be here with you. Otherwise, stay blessed for now, and bye bye. Good night.